Right, this is the appropriate time where we can talk about Xerxe then, so we'll talk about him, right?
Yeah.
Here's the thing I have, is I've noticed, 'cause I've had him on my talk shows before, I've talked about him with a lot of his teammates, there's this weird sort of background aspect that people have to know of the context about his career, which is, in the same way as the aforementioned Reckless has this whole stereotype of like, he is here's the thing, if I say the dreaded word passive, everyone's pants go off out the window and they lose their fucking minds because they think what you're saying is, he's a coward, he won't even go in, whereas what I really mean is, he's just a bit more conservative. By the way, he also fucking plays AD carry, which is a role that's entirely appropriate to be sometimes more conservative in. It's about being responsible with the goal that you build up to carry the team fight. You don't want to flash it all the time.
No.
But the problem is, in general, the reason I give that analogy is a lot of players, if you ever imply that they're not just 24/7 aggressive, like macho men, they sort of get triggered by it. So Xerxe, right, always used to claim, even in this team, even in Splice, he would always claim, like, why do people say I'm like a passive farm jungler? Like, why do people say I'm not ganking? Like, it's not true. And plus, when I was on Unicorns of Love and I had my champions, I would go ham and stuff. So what always bizarre about this, listen, I don't consider myself an expert about League of Legends Vizicsacsi. If you tell me I'm wrong, you can tell me I'm wrong. Okay. But as a layman, when I watched him, dude, he wasn't ganking. He looked like he looked like he was smart when he ganked. Like, he looked like he ganked at certain times that made a lot of sense. But he definitely looked like he power farmed at certain times, and that was just his style. Like, I've seen him play a few years now. It just seems that that's more his tendency as a jungler. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Can you give me some thoughts? Because he seems like a strange guy to me in that sense. Because I always thought he was good, but unorthodox, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a bit would be a bit stupid to call him passive, because this kind of terms that people are putting on others, on like players, is not really true, because when you play together with them, you actually get to know the thought process behind of what he does as well. And Xerxe as a jungler, he was insane at things and maybe worse at others. Let's say you are saying that he was power farming and ganking less. That was basically his style. The way he imagined the jungle is kind of like a chess game, where he's making the moves and he's more like waiting for the enemy to make a move, and then he can counter it quite well.
Right.
And he was always able to predict where the enemy jungler is, and that's something that I have not seen before. Like, he actually always knew where the enemy jungler is. He's gonna be like, he's going to do this and this clear, then he's gonna be at this and this time here and here. Like, he had all the jungle clears and everything down in his head, and that's what made him, I think, a really good jungler for me, or for us as a team, because he was very good at predicting this. Yes, it came with a bit more passivity, that he was power farming and thinking more about it, but it was not necessarily a downside, because power farming doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. It was his style to get a bit stronger and then gank, because ganking is also quite a high risk. If you do like a level 3 gank, one of the lanes, and it doesn't work out, that puts you very far behind the jungler, because the enemy gets the info that you are there, and the enemy jungler might even take your camps in the meantime. And he didn't want to take this kind of risk, or he was less open towards this than many other junglers. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just a style. It's basically a style. It fits into certain teams well, it fits into other teams worse. That's how it is with every other player's play style as well. Yeah. So I would say he's quite a solid player, and I wouldn't have any complaints about him in the Splice times. I think he was one of the best on the team for sure.
Well, let's extend this point a little bit, because my thoughts when you say that is, first of all, people have to remember how much the jungle changed by this time. This isn't like the Korean era where you could just study a VOD and you could literally tell based on like what you've seen, he's probably in this part of the map. This is actually the time already where they fucked with jungle enough. You're just guessing. And so I've actually heard, but like, first of all, I totally agree. One of the things I found amazing about this Splice team was, at the same time everyone was telling me he doesn't gank enough, I would be like, yeah, but he's never in the wrong position though. Like, even if he doesn't gank, like, he counter ganks when the other guy's going to gank, and when they aren't, that's when he's power farming. Like, in a way, isn't that, like, if that's your style, that's actually like kind of genius. And then the other thing to say was, this is also the era when, since as I say, you can't always guess where they are. I've heard from some of his other teammates that it's the same thing. They said it's like he had map hacks. It's like he had no fog of war on. You're like, oh, he's over here. You're like, how the fuck could you know that? Like, we haven't even got to put a ward anywhere near that.
Yeah, that's what made him quite insane. But I think he got this. People are describing him a bit more like a passive player because of when he's playing a tank. And I do have to agree here a bit that when he was playing the likes of Sejuani, for example, he was struggling a lot on Sejuani because in team fights he was not playing to the limits. He was more of like engaging, getting the CC down, and then basically after he was half HP, he was just running out and trying to recover a bit. but that's not something you can do on tanks, and that's not what people expect you to do. It's more like a heroic sacrifice that you have to do here.
Yes.
You basically go in and you just throw out the CCs. It's not the KDA that matters here, but more of getting your team set up for success, even if it means that you die in the end. It really doesn't matter if you live or die as a tank, as long as you win the team fight. So that's where I think people think of him more of as a passive player. And I did notice this in the early stages of Splice as well, that he was backing out too early from fights as tank players, as a tank. But I think when people started describing him as this passive player, this really got into his head, and he tried to be much more aggressive, and that was not really his style anymore. So
Right.
he kind of mixed this up as well. It was not good for him at all to read social media, I would say. Should have just gotten rid of Twitter, Facebook, and everything, and just play completely without social media, because then he would have stick to his own ideas and not be influenced by this. But in the end, I would still consider him to have been one of the best junglers in the league at the time.
Yeah, and to be fair, when you give that advice, like, it's not how you play a tank. Like, you're not just saying, like, the jungler, just going, like, that's how you played that way. You had to play a tank most of your career. Yeah, listen, you are a tank. Your job is just to get hit by the enemy. I'm sorry, that's why being a tank sucks,
Exactly.
but also can be very valuable, of course. Yeah, exactly. Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.